So after the combine, come April, there's going to be an NFL draft. So let's transition to segment 2, and let's talk about the NFL draft, where the Chicago Bears are picking first, and the Detroit Lions are picking 6. Now, there's a report that came out on Monday that says the Chicago Bears are shopping the number 1 pick. Which is interesting, because if they're shopping the number 1 pick, they're keeping Justin Fields as their quarterback. I mean, that's like the de facto conclusion you can draw, right? They're not drafting a quarterback. What's going to be interesting is who they trade with. There's been rumored that the Colts could trade up to make sure that they get the quarterback that they wanted. Carolina's an option that could trade up to get the quarterback that they want. Should the Lions be in that conversation, Eric?
Yeah.
No.
Yes.
God bless no.
The Lions should be in that conversation.
Why?
Now, it should not be for a quarterback.
No, I know that.
They should not be trying to move up for a quarterback, but should they entertain the idea of trying to make sure Will Anderson
absolutely not
is in Honolulu Blue? Yeah. What are you talking about?
Gosh.
Why would you not? Why would you not try to make sure and see and just test the water on what it would take to get a Jalen Carter? If they don't call them to even see what it's like, I would be very disappointed. They don't have to move up. I'm not saying it's what it is, but based on what you said, Lo, you talked about like the elite edge rushers that are in that top 5. And if they're not there, trade out. But if they want to get a Myles Murphy and make sure that he's, in the Honolulu Blue by the time the fall starts, I have no problem with that. They have the extra capital to do it. They need, like you just said, there's a lot of need in terms of the defense. So why not address it with the best player available and possibly move up a couple spots in a draft that may be chaotic as ever, where everybody is trying to trade?
It's going to be chaotic.
So they need to do their due diligence to make sure that if they don't have a chance, that's fine. But pick up the phone and find out. Absolutely.
First of all, your boy Myles Murphy is dropping a little bit.
Is he?
Yeah. As I checked the weekly rankings, he tends to be dropping.
To outside of 10 or just like
he would be a reach at 6.
Wow, yeah. That's crazy.
Like my top 10, the top 10. Well, maybe he wouldn't be a reach at 6, but like his cumulative ranking right now is 9.6.
Okay. So yeah, it's a couple of a gamble.
He's dropping a little bit, but that's beside the point. The Lions. Here's the problem with trading up to number 1. This is the most amount of draft capital you are going to have for the foreseeable future. 2, 3, 4 years, right?
Okay.
So you can think of that one of 2 ways. Yes, you could use that to move up and draft a Will Anderson or a Jalen Carter, right?
Phenomenal players.
The 2 best players in this draft, bar none.
Yep.
Bar none. There's no debate about that. I don't know if the juice is worth the squeeze, though. In the sense that if you had to trade 6, because the Chicago Bears are not taking less than pick number 6.
Right.
Plus potentially one of your second-round picks and a future draft pick. Just for that number 1 overall pick, it could work out, right? Because obviously you could take Will Anderson or Jalen Carter, whichever one you like more, and then you still have 18, which you could trade up from or back from.
Yep.
I just don't know, man. I don't like it.
I think
it's having 5, because you got to go with the law of averages here, right? You've got 5 draft picks. What is the odds that 5 of those draft picks are going to all hit? They're not very high.
It's not likely, no.
So you've got to give yourself the most opportunity to hit on 2 or 3 out of those 5.
So based on that, wouldn't it make sense to go after the best player available on a defensive line that's a piece away?
Yeah, for sure. But did you say the defensive line is a piece away or the defense is a piece away?
No. Defensive line is a piece away, not the defense.
So if that's the case, but if that's the case, sure, you are minimizing your capital to then fill one area of need when you have multiple areas of need.
Right, but as you've discussed a lot, that there are different values for different areas on each side of the field.
Sure.
The D-line is probably the most valuable, maybe you can argue, on either side of the field. Outside of quarterback.
I would say second or third.
Okay,
Depending on where you put quarterback on your power ranking,
right.
I think my power ranking would be offensive line, defensive line, quarterback.
Right.
Those are that's like my top 3.
Okay. So knowing that and knowing what you could add to a D-line that already has shown promise, that has Aiden that's, ascending, throwing in a Will Anderson or a Jalen Carter on top of that, and with Brad Holmes, who showed the ability to draft late, where you're not just relying like you did in the other regimes with those top 3 rounds, really hoping they pan out. You've seen that he's able to find gems, and you're able to be a little bit more expendable knowing you have that trust in him. So I don't think it's that crazy to throw out that idea.
It's not crazy. I'm not saying you're crazy, but I am saying I want to give the guy that I trust the most opportunity to do the most things with it. Meaning, I want him to have 5 picks in the top 81. I don't want him to have 4 picks in the top 81. And then on top of that, because of what you just said, his ability to find talent late in the draft, James Houston.
Mm-hmm. Rodrigo.
And beyond the 3rd round, beyond pick 81, there's no reason why he can't fulfill that need. Now, I understand that somewhat undermines my focus only on defense argument that I just made in the last segment, but at the same time, you got to take, I think, more risk when it comes to defensive players because you don't know how they're going to fit necessarily schematically and within how they're going to adjust to the speed of the game, whereas you would trade up to get more surefire offensive. I think it's easier to be certain on offensive players than it is defensive players, is what I'm trying to say.
Oh, I don't know if I agree with that, especially in certain positions. Especially considering for this team. So let's take the Lions.
With quarterback being the exception. Let me be very clear about that.
Fine.
With quarterback being the very clear exception.
But based on how the Lions are set up,
be.
Right, but based on how they're set up, they're not in a need where they have to trade up for an offensive player.
No,
so
and they shouldn't.
Defense, right, it's defense, they could do that. And knowing that a Jalen Carter, like you said, you're not going to get, I don't think they're trying to put together the 85 Bears. That doesn't have to be their thing. No. So if they just have an elite D-line and, a Ben Bado breakback 7, I think you can live with that and survive with that alone. So even if you are taking a gamble like that, I think that trade up is worth it considering who's at the top and considering where they are with this team set up already.
I just don't know. I think for a team that's in year 3 of the rebuild, having more draft capital is more important than landing the number 1 overall pick.
Do you so in drafting period, let's just take everything away. Are you for trading up at all? Because it seems like you've pushed back on a lot of the idea of trading up from where it was J-Mo last season, the idea of it now. It just seems like it's not your thing.
It just depends on what is there.
Okay.
So see, last year when they traded up, when they made that trade up at 12, before they announced the name, I was like, oh my gosh, he's doing it. I thought he was going for Devin Lloyd or Kyle Hamilton or, actually addressing need. And then when the name J-Mo was announced, I was like, well, that seems like a waste of a trade up. However, listen, it is what it is, right? J-Mo's going to be what he is. I'm rooting for him. It all depends on what you trade up to do.
They addressed a need, though. Wide receiver was a need last season.
I understand that, but you could have also had George Pickens in the 2nd round, who would have played the whole year.
Okay.
Right? Pickens, J-Mo has elite speed. I'm with you.
Yeah.
But Pickens is also a really good player.
He is. I like him.
Could have
gotten his upside a lot.
Sky Moore's more of an Amon-Ra St. Brown type receiver, but he would have been available there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Pickens, Treylon Burks, there were so many wide receivers that were in this draft. I'm glad that we traded up and got him so that he didn't go to Green Bay. Sure, I get that, and I love the viral video of the Packers fan just freaking out that we did that. I don't know if you've seen that or not.
I did see that, yes.
But it all depends on what you trade up for. If you've got, let's say that somehow Brad Holmes acquires similar draft capital next season, but the picks aren't as high because we obviously had a more successful season.
Mm-hmm.
he doesn't draft a quarterback this year, but trades up to draft Caleb Williams next year, that's a good trade up. And I'm not gonna be like, no, don't do that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, okay.
It all depends on what you're like. Am I gonna be mad if they trade up and get Will Anderson?
No, you wouldn't.
No. Do I think it's gonna be necessarily the best, most valuable move that they could have made? I'm also gonna say probably not. But I'm not gonna be upset about it.
Right. Depending on what they give up, depending on how much it takes to get up there.
Exactly. And I don't think it's gonna be cheap.
No, I don't think they'll get to 1 either. I know you mentioned that at the top. I think if they maybe could get to like
2.
I've seen mocks where Carter's fallen to 5.
Yeah.
Like it's possible. A lot of teams in the top 10, not even in 5. Like those lower teams like Carolina and Atlanta, they could pop up to the top 5 too. So
so those are the teams that you got to keep track of, right? Carolina at 9, the Falcons as well. They are all going to, or Carolina's at 10, the Falcons are at 9, the Raiders are at 8.
Another wild card team, yep.
Right. Excuse me, that's not correct. The Raiders are at 7, the Falcons are at 8, the Panthers are at 9.
Panthers are at 9, okay.
And the Titans are at 11. So, like, any one of those teams could legitimately move into the top 5 to take quarterback.
Uh-huh.
Which, again, works in the Lions' favor if those teams all jump up to get those quarterbacks.
Yeah.
Is it unrealistic to think that the top 4 quarterbacks are off the board by the time pick 6 comes around?
No, that's not.
I don't think that's
very possible.
I don't think that's unrealistic.
Teams are going to get aggressive.
Would be the best case scenario for the Detroit Lions.
Absolutely. They need that to happen. Like we were all clouded the Houston Texans, but that Chicago falling to 1 made a lot of dreams possible for some teams looking for a quarterback now.
Right, because like let's say the Falcons or even the Raiders, let's say either of them or the Panthers trade up with the Chicago Bears. Well, the Chicago Bears then are going to be behind the Lions.
Right.
And Arizona doesn't need a quarterback. They do need offensive line, but there's not anybody high enough to get at number 3. So most likely, Will Carter's not going to make it past 3.
No.
Unless they take Jalen Davis. I don't know. There's so many scenarios. We got to stop talking draft until free agency happens. We just got to do it because there's so many things. We can't do that. There's so many things that are just like so many variables. I just don't think that trading up is in the best interest. Yes, it's going to land you a phenomenal player, and I'll be happy. But I wonder how much it's going to hurt you on the back end.
I think they'll be fine. Especially if you can get a Bobby Wagner for the cheap. If you can, steal and plug him in. Remember, we're talking about a 2-3 year window of really getting somewhere. So
if they go heavily aggressive in free agency, which hasn't really been the style, but could be now that they put together, that 8-2 over the last 10. If they were to go aggressive and be like Bobby Wagner, right? Like defense, maybe they even sign like a wide receiver or, something like that. If they get aggressive in free agency, then I'm like, okay, package 6 and 18 together and go get Will Anderson, right?
Yeah.
If they sign like a good cornerback in free agency, maybe they make a trade for Jalen Ramsey for, one of their second round picks, and they kind of use the draft capital as fodder for building a more experienced and more talented defense.
Yeah.
Yeah, trade up and get it. But it's all going to be dependent upon what is happening at that time.
Of course.
What has happened in free agency, and now where are we sitting? So you got to tune into this show because we'll have plenty of answers. I guarantee you that.